It's trash day, I'm putting you out, it's trash day. Putting you out, it's trash day. Putting you out of my mind. It's trash day, I'm putting you out, it's trash day. I'm putting you out, trash day, I'm putting you out of my mind. Now I'm gonna clean up, now I'm gonna clean up, now I'm gonna clean up the house. I'm taking all your garbage, taking all your garbage, taking all your garbage out.
Welcome to Can Crusher Spotlight. This is going to be a new series that we do for foreseeable future as I sit down with wrestlers and talk to them. It's just an interview show for the professional wrestler. You know, if you're just hearing this for the first time, send us an email at cancrusher69@gmail.com. Come on the show. We're always welcoming anyone. You know, we'll set up a time, get an interview, and we'll go from there. I want to thank Chad Miller and Al Snow from Ohio Valley Wrestling. This kind of all blossomed from their interview about a month ago on Can Crusher. So, first one to the show is Jay Bradley. Jay has had a 20-year career, you know, transitioning back into Ohio Valley Wrestling. This interview that I recorded this past Tuesday, wow, Jay has had a wonderful career. And guys, sit down and enjoy this interview after a message from Collar and Elbow.
Wrestling. A love and a passion we all share. I've started a wrestling brand. The wrestling brand. A brand founded on the aspects of wrestling. Two entities working together to create a product that connect emotionally for people everywhere. Collar and Elbow is the brand. Passion and love for wrestling is the drive. I am Al Snow, and this is Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand.
And welcome back to Can Crushers. Folks, we have one hell of a guest. He has been in the business for 20 years. You've seen him on WWE, TNA. He's been in House of Hardcore. He's been to Japan, Ohio Valley Wrestling, and most recently, he's been part of the 70th anniversary for NWA. Folks, welcome to the show, Jay Bradley.
Hey, man, how are you? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the outlet.
Yeah, no problem. Like we said off the air, a friend of a friend, and we get connected, and that's what wrestling is about, right?
Yeah, I think wrestling, especially nowadays, social media has changed so much. Everyone's instantly more connected. But I think, the last couple of years, wrestling in general has brought a lot of fans together, being able to share what they like, shared interests, shared wrestlers that they like, and it's back in my day, like I'm some old hand, we had to trade tapes or, dig up things in the magazines, PWIs or, what have you, to find out what was going on in other parts of the world that wasn't on TV in your area. So, yeah, I mean, wrestling has been doing that a lot. I feel, it's almost like each independent or each wrestling company nowadays has like its following, almost like a local punk rock band or a folk band would, that almost travels with them or something to that extent. So it's kind of a cool time to be a pro wrestling fan. There's never been more of it available and accessible and more excitement, I think, in a long time.
Speaking of the old man, Jay, I'm older than you by a couple years, and I did the same thing. I had a friend in Brooklyn that he got WWF back at the time. I got NWA here, and we were legitimately sending tapes through the mail so I could see Hogan against this person and he could see Dusty and Flair, because we didn't get that. You had to read it in PWI. It was amazing what has transformed into wrestling now.
Yeah, growing up, I was much more, I was outside Chicago. I was much more of a a WWF guy, and as a young kid, it was the larger than life personalities, the presentation, the glitz, the glamour that really stuck with me. And when I would see other stuff like AWA or NWA, WCW here in the area on TV, I thought it was, kind of a step below. I just wasn't knowledgeable because, I wasn't watching it for the action. And then later on, as I grew up a little bit, my grandfather actually used to have the old WCW, NWA Saturday night shows on at Grandpa's house. So that's how I started to get exposed to those guys. We're talking about but that's like the Bill Watts era, JR era, WCW, and WWF, in my opinion, was still, in the boom period of their golden years. So, and then, as I grew up, got into my teens, tape trading, and, the internet kind of started to take off around that time. And, I remember, USWA actually used to be on syndicated TV here for a little bit. So I get to see like the old Memphis guys, and seeing Jerry Lawler in a different way than just the King version he did. He portrayed as a commentator, but then also I had, for a little bit, ECW was on syndicated TV here, and so was Smoky Mountain. And I was actually just thinking about that, talking about that to a friend, that, as a person at that time was trying to get, thinking about maybe getting into pro wrestling, that I had such extremes because I could watch ECW for the hardcore, the violence, pushing the envelope, and the shock value. And I appreciated that because it was so drastically different, but then I still like things like the USWA and Smoky Mountain because it was like good old wrestling, you know what I mean? Like, it was about the story, it was about the storyline and the progression and the good guy versus the bad guy. I appreciate kind of growing up in the Midwest here. I got exposed to such a wrestling from all ends here ended up, with Smoky Mountain, ECW, WCW, WWF was predominant, as Vince had already kind of taken over a lot of stuff, but then also like AWA and USWA. So I had a very wide range of tastes or interests as far as pro wrestling goes. So I got to experience that as a kid.
You've actually touched on one of my questions that I was going to ask. Who got you involved in wrestling? You said you brought up your grandfather got you into WCW, NWA, and my grandfather is the sole reason why I love wrestling. For the longest time, I thought everybody was in this big umbrella, that why wasn't Hogan fighting Flair, and why aren't they having the match that everybody wants, until I grew up. So who got you involved, and so on?
To be honest with you, growing up, my mom despised pro wrestling and didn't want me, or I wasn't allowed to watch it. So I had to like sneak around her back on Saturday mornings to watch Superstars when she was still sleeping, or early in the morning on Saturday when like some of the syndicated stuff would come on, like the Smoky Mountains and the USWAs. And, when I'd be at friend's house or my grandma and grandpa's house, watch it there. And it wasn't until like later that my mom kind of like gave up on trying to, enforce that law. So I don't have one person directly related to it. I think it was indirectly probably my mom, because it was one of those things like, you shouldn't do this as a kid, so you're going to try to do it anyways to see what it was about. And I was always into sports, played just about every sport growing up for some duration of time, just to try it all. And I was always big into like, the comic books and, action cartoons like, Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, stuff like that. So, WWF at the time was pretty much an amalgamation of all that. You had the athleticism and you had the superhero-looking guys, good versus evil, and that was that.
Right. Who was your, off topic, who was your favorite comic book?
Growing up, I was a big X-Men guy. Growing up as a kid, Batman.
Yes, thank you.
I'm still a big Batman fan. Obviously I don't read issue to issue anymore. It just got so expensive, so I pick up a lot of trade paperbacks. X-Men to me in like the last 10 to 15 years has gotten so convoluted I don't even know where to begin anymore. So I'm sitting on quite a bit of Batman stuff to read, almost the entire 52 run and Grant Morrison's run. So I'll probably dive into that here in the near future.
Wow, you do have a lot to catch up on there.
Yeah.
Shifting back gears to wrestling, Who did you want to be? It's kind of like a three-part question. Who was your favorite growing up? And if you could have been in that 80s mod, as I do my air quotes, what would your gimmick have been? Who would you have been?
Oh, you know what? Like, as who was my favorite? I didn't really have a favorite. I say that as a child, I didn't, because I was just a fan of whoever they were pushing hard, pretty much. Like when Hogan was going crazy, like I was a Hulkamaniac. And then when they started pushing Warrior, I jumped on Warrior's bandwagon. And the same thing, when Jake was cool with the Snakes, I was a Jake guy, So, like, I was very much influenced by just whoever the business was about and who Vince was pushing at the time. That's what I got into. As far as, yes, who I would want to be, that's, I've never been asked that question, but realistically, and to be honest, when I was getting in the business, like, I almost didn't, and I shouldn't say almost, I didn't like being as big as I was, for the reason that a lot of the big guys at the time, they weren't doing very athletic matches. It was much slower paced, methodical, didn't seem too realistic at the time. It was just the style that was predominant at the time. And I looked at guys like more of the Japanese lighter heavyweights, or the cruiserweight light heavyweights. And I say light heavyweight, like, the guys that were like 220 and under, or guys under 200 pounds at that time. And they were just, so you think back, that's like the Ligers, Muda, even a guy, he's like, dare you to say his name, but, Pegasus Kid, Black Tiger, that whole range, the Finleys, and they were just doing things that were just so much faster paced and more athletic, and that's what caught my attention. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. But then as I got into pro wrestling, everyone was like, Jesus, you're an 18-year-old kid, and you're 6'4" plus, and you're over 200 pounds, 220 pounds, 250 pounds naturally. You know what I mean? Like, what are you watching this stuff for? And then I got exposed to stuff like All Japan, and then was off to the races with guys like, I couldn't get enough of like Stan Hansen and Doc and Gordy,
yes,
little Brody, Vader, all those guys that were like the American gaijin, just they're kicking ass, that were like the smallest one was like 6'2", like 250 pounds. Like, they were all just these big ass kickers. So that was what I would have probably fallen into, that mold, back in that heyday boom, just for the sheer size and athleticism that I've been blessed with. And, that's kind of the style I like to employ.
A Stan Hansen throwback right now would probably have me marking out across the board. Just saying. Just that ruthlessness that he had. Probably one of my favorite bad guys. So, heels, but, I continue with the bad guys.
Sure.
So, we're now going to talk about, you trained in Chicago with some huge upcoming stars. And I'm going to let you announce who they are. I know who they are, but for the listeners, that some huge people went to the same school with, and let's talk about that.
Okay. I broke into the pro wrestling business out of Chicago in the camp Steel Domain Wrestling. There's a pocket of just incredible talent looking back on it now, 20 years ago. People who were involved with this camp, it was run by a few guys as trainers. Danny Dominion, who went on to do a lot of upper level stuff, but never unfortunately really stuck or got a big shot. Ace Steel, who, early days of TNA, WWE developmental guy, Pro Wrestling Noah, tour for years. Scrap Iron Adam Pearce was there, who's, now former NWA heavyweight champ, and helping run WWE now. And then Colt Cabana, who's just, I think, has really, I'll dare say, revolutionized some portion of the business with what he's done with his podcast, because he was one of the first people to do that, really bring that as an aspect to pro wrestling. And you see what that's become, because everybody and their son is trying to copy that,
right? Including us.
Yeah, well, then also, a little guy by the name of CM Punk, who went on to do quite well for himself. There was a few other guys that, weren't any slouches by any means of the word. They just, went about life in a different manner and, settled down, had families, and pursued other things. So, that pocket of talent, another guy that was there helping train on and off was Kevin Quinn. Little known fact, he was one of the guys with Brian Christopher and Scotty 2 Hotty when they were going to expand Too Cool. So he was in WWE for a little bit. He toured Japan for UWFI, Mexico mainstay, Puerto Rico mainstay when that was a sizzling place. So I got a really good knowledge base when I started pro wrestling as a basics, how things were done, and a launching point or a stepping stone to continue my career. And I think Kevin doesn't get enough due because he's got his thumbprint on not only the people I mentioned, like myself and Punk, Cabana, but like a lot of guys. He trained guys out in LA when WWE was affiliated with some camps out there. With like, you guys might know, like Cena, Samoa Joe, Rocky Romero, New Japan mainstay, TJ Perkins, former Cruiserweight champion. So like, Kevin's helped out a lot of people, including myself. So again, like I had a really, really good start in pro wrestling, and I just was able to use it as a catapult to get me further with that knowledge base.
Yeah, for sure. With the likes of, I'm going to stick with two, Punk and Cabana. That what you learned and trained with is amazing. Every once in a while, there's an indie federation that I go to monthly. It's called International Wrestling Cartel up in Pittsburgh. And
Norm Connors, correct?
Well, it's Justin Plummer now bought it from him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was Norm. Okay, I remember Punk and Cabana used to go out there years ago.
Yeah,
So Norm.
Cabana is still probably once or twice a year he pops up, and just to pick his brain is amazing about podcasting. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, he took a chance when WWE cut him loose a little bit before they let me, go, and you're thinking that's almost 10 years ago, but he found a niche with his personality and his charisma and his interaction with people that people know him for that now. And think about it then. What was a podcast? No one knew what this was, and he found a way that was something new and different, and that make it original, and that's kind of his niche now, which I applaud him for.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. You read my mind. He's known more. Well, for wrestling fans, we know who Cole Cabana is, but his podcast is, listened to by people that don't even like wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's developed a little bit of pop culture following, and good for him.
Yeah. So we're going to shift gears. 2005 to 2009, you kind of worked with Deep South, OVW. You were on WWE. Heat, Raw, SmackDown. You worked with D-Lo.
ECW. I was on all of them.
ECW, Hacksaw.
Yep.
A guy named Idol Stevens, who we know as Damian Sandow. You had your Ryan Braddock gimmick.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk about that. Now, stories from.
Shit. So many. I signed with WWE right around Thanksgiving, I think of 2005. It was unfortunately right around the passing of Eddie Guerrero. I was there that day in Minneapolis, so it was a very somber day. And they actually sent me home early, and then I went back to a TV about a week later, and that's when I was hired. They sent me down to Deep South for about a year and some change to work under Bill DeMott, Jody Hamilton, which then later became Dave Taylor, and Brad Armstrong and Dr. Tom Pritchard. I like to say I did really well for myself. I was the Deep South champion 2 or 3 times.
3.
Excuse me, my bad.
No, that's okay.
I learned I was inundated with pro wrestling, and it was a good and bad thing. I was in a very small town that had nothing to do for us to do except work out, go to the bar, and pro wrestle and try to stay out of trouble. So I learned a lot of things of how pro wrestling is on the major level as far as WWE goes. I also learned about what not to do as far as what was working and what was not working. As far as developing talent, I learned a lot about politics at that point as far as, in the locker room or in the office. I look back now and I realize what a learning experience that was. At the time, I was so focused on just the gym and the ring aspect of it, like, being athletic and staying muscular and, putting on good matches and being coachable, that there was a lot that I didn't really sink in at that time. And that was like the political stuff, and how to manage yourself in the locker room. And it's not like there was anything crazy going on. It's just like, look back then, and I just realized, like, wow, like I was so focused on one thing. I had tunnel vision on. It was a great experience, man. Like, the training was absolutely brutal at times. I'm sure there's 1,001 other podcasts or urban legends about what went on in Deep South, as it seems to get asked about it from time to time. Like, it was rough, man. From what I hear, John Laurinaitis wanted it to be like a very hardcore Japanese-style dojo where it was just like, only the strong survive mentality. And it was a lot of cardio drills. It was a lot of bumps, a lot of squats some days, jogging a few miles or a warm-up, stretching, rolls, like you name it, we did it. Push-ups, sit-ups, and then we would wrestle, then we would drill, then we would wrestle some more. It was a lot of training as opposed to a lot of shows or matches.
And how many hours in a day are you training? Is it you're putting an 8-hour shift?
It varied. There was usually like I would probably say 3 or 4 hours. In the ring area. We had 2 classes at times, going from like 8 to noon, or like noon to 4, or something like that. They would split us up, and so that's what it was as far as training, and then that you would have to take care of your body in the gym and your workouts there on your own. I really think a lot of that experience helped obviously springboard me further as far as the conditioning and of my body, and then of like my mentally conditioning about what this business can put people through. Maybe the head games or the mind games. So all in all, it was a very good learning experience for me. And as far as a mixed bag of experience with some really great things, some really good things, some okay things, and some crappy things. So, that's life.
Right. How did you get the Ryan Braddock gimmick? Where did this come from?
Well, initially when they moved me to OVW. Just after Deep South, the WWE office wanted me to change my name, and me and I think a few other guys, I think Kurt Hawkins and Luke Gallows and some other people we were just spitballing names, and nothing was working, and we were at it for a few hours, and then Al Snow was like, "What's your new name?" And I was like, and he goes, "Okay, why don't we just do Jay Bradley?" And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." So I stuck with that for the next few years, and then literally in a very similar fashion, I had just got off the plane to go to SmackDown the day before I was to debut on SmackDown, and Krista Joseph, who was the writer at the time, who now heads up Lucha Underground, called me and was like, "Hey, we need a new name for you. Come up with 3 to 5 names, and we're going to come up with a few, and then we'll see what works." And I don't even remember what names I came up with, and then the writers came up with a few. None of them were Ryan Braddock whatsoever. So I think when they went into the production writers meeting, someone, maybe even Vince, was like, screw it, pal, he's Ryan Braddock, and that's what I got. So that's where Ryan Braddock came from.
That's a great Vince impersonation, by the way. We might cut that and use that on several different podcasts, just to let you know that.
You got it, pal.
All right. So after that run of 2005, 2009 with Deep South and OVW, WWE, and all of those, you hit the Indies again, and you, again, huge names that you worked with. Tyler Black, some people might know them. TJ Perkins. Let's talk about just that 2009 where you were sinking your teeth back into indies.
That was a very, I'll say, interesting time because it's like you just get released. For me, I got released from WWE after nearly 4 years there. And going back on the indies was kind of like a crapshoot at the time because it wasn't nearly as booming as it is now by any means. Like, people weren't following indie wrestlers as either a single entity or as a promotion, an indie promotion like they are now by any stretch. So, from a business standpoint, like the money wasn't even there. Like, I think I wrestled Tyler Black, who's now, Seth Rollins in front of like 80 people in Chicago for AAW, maybe 100. Now AAW's drawing sellout crowds. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a drastic difference. Humbling was one thing that it did because it's like, no one cared or no one knew what I had done in developmental because really no one was paying attention to it, unfortunately, because like I said, no one was following stuff like they do now. And so I had to like kind of re-educate people like who I was and what I did and the talent that I possessed. So that was one aspect of it. And then actually, like, I actually took a little bit of time away after this era just to step away from pro wrestling to kind of clear my head and see if it was something I really wanted to continue doing and explore other aspects of life because I had just focused on pro wrestling so long. And I knew that I could still compete in the ring at a high level with high-level talent if I wanted to. I just needed to take a breath and kind of, do some other things for a little while.
Oh, okay. That makes perfect sense. We all do that. Trust me. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to start doing. So then you made your way to TNA and you got into the gut check tournament where you fought, Styles and Aries and Hernandez and Abyss.
So that was actually the Bound for Glory tournament. So I won the gut check. So let me backtrack I won the gut check, and then from being the gut check, I was in the company full time, and then they took all the gut check winners, I think it was, and they put us in a tournament, and the winner got in the Bound for Glory tournament. So yeah, but you're right. From there I went in and wrestled all those guys in the Bound for Glory tournament.
Yeah, and TNA then, you did that for a little bit. TNA released you, and then it was a year later TNA kind of signed you again. But when you were in that first time in TNA, I heard stories that you possibly could have been part of Aces and Eights.
I actually was part of Aces and Eights, and it was never followed through, unfortunately. One of the horrible loose end storylines that never went anywhere.
So were you one of the ones that beat down Sting?
I was one of the original 3 that beat down Sting. It was me, Mike Knox, and I'm totally drawing a blank. Yeah, but it was me and Mike Knox and another gentleman. And from what I understand, I was to be the sleeper agent within Impact, helping them. And they just dropped the idea and went different directions. And TNA at this time, or has been, was a crapshoot. There was a lot of talent there, but a lot of things changed as they typically do day to day in pro wrestling. But it just seemed more so, a victim of also, creative turnover, because you had Hulk and Eric Bischoff as the executive producers for a while, and Dixie there, Jeff Jarrett there, and then Jeff stepping away, and then Bruce Pritchard was there too, so then Bruce is gone, Bischoff is gone, they bring in Gaburik, and, it was just constantly influx of talent, so who was making the decisions on doing what, and one person maybe just didn't like the idea or wanted to wait on it, so it was never fully developed, unfortunately. But, yep, it was that too.
So too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, as they say, or that logo, that saying, I mean?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I think, a lot of people put the heat, so to say, on Dixie because she was at the head of it. And, I've tried to tell people all the time, and people accuse me of, sticking up for Dixie and whatnot. But it was, she was the top of the food chain, I guess, or one of the people at the top of the food chain, but there was like 10 people under her, and you never knew who was doing what which day, or who was involved in writing or creative, or who was setting the course of the ship, because it changed so often. And, a lot of that goes on, so it's like it just created, and it felt like a lot of unease and free-for-all. And this is also around the same time where, if you remember, there was this horror stories going around that people weren't getting paid for months and months at a time.
Yep.
So it was all that time frame. So if that puts you in any context of now people aren't getting paid and there's a lot of strife from that, now imagine what the office is really like when they can't make decisions on the creative end of things.
Yeah. Hard times. We'll just leave it at that. As Big Boss Man's music plays in my head real quick.
Exactly.
That you jump back to TNA though, and you were Aiden O'Shea, then kind of a bodyguard for Billy Corgan.
I did. That came about when I was released from Impact, or my full-time contract, essentially. They had expressed that they wanted to use me in the future, and we could do business in the future, which is fine. It is what it is. You're never going to close a door unless, you never burn a bridge, essentially. So I knew the option was always there, and I kind of kept in contact with people there. And then Billy Corgan had been named on the creative staff, and I had worked with Billy on some independent shows here in Chicago, and he was a very big believer and proponent of mine. So when he went in there, I guess inquired about what was going on with me, or why I didn't work out before, and they probably gave him the old, well, we didn't have anything for him. So Billy helped create something for me with this Aiden O'Shea gimmick, or the Thug Aiden O'Shea, which was essentially, originally supposed to be a tag team, and we were searching for a partner, and then just no one became available that we thought fit. And basically it was a take on a little bit of the old school Chicago gangsters, Southside Irish, here ruffian. Like there's a whole little bit of a Chicago subculture on the south side of Chicago of, the fighting Irishmen, essentially. And that's what it was a take on. And we kind of built it off that. And then when he became an on-camera character, they played into the angle that, or the fact that him and I had known each other and we're both from Chicago. So I was his bodyguard, or his muscle, whatever you want to call that.
That would have went. I think that would have went over great. The whole Irish, like the Murphy brothers, or there's a movie out there that has just instantly left my head that I can't think of. But they were just
Boondock Saints.
No, there was another one with like four brothers. Boondock Saints is it's that too. But there was four brothers that just beat the hell out of people, and that would have been you.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion on the table with it that we never really got to accomplish or execute on TV. For instance, I did a series of tapings where I jumped Mirabali Shira, if you remember him, the dancing Indian gentleman,
yes, behind
the scenes, and I put my cigar out on his face. And then we had a couple series of matches and some other, not a series of matches, but some other interaction that was to set up me and him wrestling each other in India. Well, he ended up getting a concussion, so they scrapped the whole. Well, he ended up getting a concussion, and then the Indian tour got delayed severely, if you remember that as well. So they ended up scrapping the whole thing and never airing it on TV. Another one of those things that, like, go back to what you just said about, the creative and too many chiefs in the Indian, too many chefs in the kitchen, too many chiefs, not enough Indians type of scenario. Like, there's just so much chaotic stuff going on. I think a lot of times it was literally them just playing damage control a lot, things like that. All right, he gets injured, he's got a concussion, he's got this, so we can't put him in the ring because of the liability risk. And then, well, we got to scrap the whole angle. So there went all the work that I had essentially done to gain exposure for this storyline for myself, for him, and leading up to a big match in his home country, and it all just gets wiped away in one easy swoop.
Yeah, you touched on concussions. I wasn't even going to bring this up, but how do you feel that the wrestling overall is taking care of concussions now? I don't want you to say anything that's going to get anyone in trouble, but I kind of like we're going to talk about Alexa Bliss right now. You know, it's out there. She's had a concussion. She's just doing this moment of bliss thing till she gets better. We read it. Do you think it's right to keep them on air when we know what's going on?
Well, I think, let me stick back. Like, I've gotten a lot of concussion awareness. They're obviously at the forefront of athletics and society, medical science nowadays. Another former wrestler, Chris Nowinski, has headed up the Sports Legacy Institute, which has spurred a lot of the concussion research along with Boston College. And lucky enough, through my career, I've gotten to meet and spend some time with Chris, sort of like his awareness meetings and understand a lot. I think it's a necessity that they've had to do to take care of people while they're in the ring performing for them and in their life after they're performing. So I think the companies are doing a very good thing by, the concussion awareness or the impact testing that they do and the baseline test that you have to be able to pass before you can get back in the ring. And the other aspect where you're asking me is that it's a right to keep them on TV. Well, from a business standpoint, yeah, it is, because these companies have invested tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars at times into some of these, individuals as characters. So if there's a way they can utilize that character on TV to still make their investment financially positive, and that character is then still viable to them when they're able to get back in the ring as a talent and a performer and a wrestler, absolutely. Plus the other side of it, as a talent, if you're sitting at home with a concussion, depending on how your contract is written, you might not be getting paid.
Right.
So if they're taking care of guys while they're out financially still, or if that's the way they're doing it, is keeping them in, as a commentator or as a talk segment host or a GM, again, that's just them taking care of both the talent, helping them out so they can pay their bills and still make a living, and also them taking care of their investment from a business standpoint.
Right. Perfect. Nowinski had a nice little WWE career, too. I remember him as, he was the Boston College, Harvard guy so we know who he is. All right, shifting overseas, you've been to Japan a couple times. You went to Wrestle One. You just recently did Pro Wrestling Noah at Corrigan Hall. You can touch on both of them, but my first question is, Corrigan Hall, what do you feel when you walk in there?
A little bit of awe. There's just a lot of history there. Like, when you immediately walk in, there's like old trophy cases and old pictures of combat sports stuff, Olympic stuff that they've had there. And it's it's literally right next to the Tokyo Dome. So, that's right there too as well. But, as a guy myself who watched so many American heavyweights go over there and dominate, like in the All Japan days, and then even when Misawa split off and founded Noah, Noah was traditionally a heavyweight company. A lot of their stuff, everyone in Japan, all the major companies run events at Corrigan Hall. Like, there's not a day in the week, I don't think, that Corrigan doesn't have some sort of wrestling event or MMA, boxing, kickboxing event. So it's really, really cool historical building. It's probably my favorite place that I've ever wrestled. I've lucky enough been able to do it a handful of times. And just, it's the best description I can, because it was just, one of those things I'll probably never forget, like being able to wrestle there multiple times. And, it was the same place I saw in videos that, Doc and Glory ran out of the audience, and, Stan Hansen came out swinging the bull rope. Like, that's pretty cool for me. And then you grab it, and then also with the Japanese fans are just, some of the best in the world, and that's not putting down, anybody in America or any wrestling fans. It's just, as a people, they're so pleasant, and they exude gratitude for your athleticism and your athletic performance and your talents or your toughness, whatever it is. and then the way they show gratitude, they're very respectful. It was just a wonderful experience to be over there with Cork and Hall, or at Cork and Hall.
Now, in 2013, you wrestled for Wrestle One Great Muda's promotion, and you and Rob Terry kind of ran roughshod through it.
We did. That was actually put together by Jeff Jarrett and a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Suzuki, who's he's been around pro wrestling in the States and in Japan for years as like a liaison. And Muda's company was just starting off. They had broken away from All Japan at that time. And Muda was doing his own thing, and he wanted to, get a little bit of a rub from the American talent, or have a place to send some Japanese talent like Sonata, who is booming in New Japan now. He was one of Muda's proteges, and they sent him over here for about 6 to 9 months. So as part of that agreement, they wanted 2 American heavyweights, and Jeff Jarrett suggested me and Rob Terry. That was the second time I'd been to Japan, but the first time I really got to stay for a significant amount of time and do a full tour. And I really fell in love with the country, man. Like, Muda was just a phenomenal boss to work for. He treated me like a king. We worked, one of the things that I'll probably remember forever is me, Rob Terry, and the Great Muda working out at the Great Muda's gym. I don't know how many people have been able to say they did that, but I've got a picture of, me flexing like a moron next to the Great Muda at his gym. You know what I mean? Like it's going on my wall someday. You know what I mean? Like that's, when I start, hang it up and start putting things on my wall that I've done, it took us out to eat many times and just till we were fat and drunk and happy, I had a great time on that tour. I got to tour with, Takayama, who was a big influence on me, and besides Muda on the tour, like just a lot of high caliber talent, because they just train and take the business so seriously over there. Like, they don't allow slouches, they don't allow people to be complacent. So I really liked it.
And how about Pro Wrestling Noah? You just there?
I did, yeah. I did 3 tours in Noah about a year ago. Been in discussions to hopefully go back. It's just nothing definite. I've also talked to some other companies like All Japan. It's a matter of dollars and cents.
Always is, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of people don't realize that this is a business. And it's like, getting my big ass over to Japan for a month or 2. Well, there's a $2,000 to $3,000 price tag on that in airfare alone. So that's part of it. They got to make dollars and cents, and the company's got to make money. But beyond that, I think Pro Wrestling Noah was probably in one of my top experiences in the business. It was a company that, even though it's gone through significant changes since Masawa's passing, it was a company that I've always watched a lot, and I got to have some, it was a great personal experience and a great professional experience, just living in another country, exposed to the culture daily, the people, and then just some amazing talent. The guy that's their champion now, Kaito Kiyomiya, he's like a 21-year-old prodigy as far as pro wrestling goes, and I got to wrestle him in some tag matches, and just great talent on his end. Had a lot of fun wrestling him. And beyond that, I got to wrestle guys like Sugiura one-on-one, who just lost their heavyweight title at Cork Hall. I wrestled him one-on-one. Wrestling with Marufuji, Go Shiozaki, Nakajima. I pretty much wrestled the best they had, and, was right there, toe-to-toe with them. I know I impressed a lot of fans. To this day, I still get a lot of tweets and interactions on social media asking when I'm coming back, or asking Noah to bring me back, and I'm compared to guys like Bison Smith and Terry Gordy to the Japanese fan. So, we'll see what the future holds. I would jump at the opportunity to go back to Japan for any company, particularly for Noah, or even All Japan, New Japan, whoever it would be, just for the fact that I really was, enamored in all of the culture and the wrestling style over there. I loved it.
That compliment of being compared to Terry Gordy, Jay, I would think that's got to probably be up there for the best thing that's ever been said to you.
Yeah, it is. It's up there, and that's one of those guys that, like, I've always tried to. I studied a lot. I don't want to say like stole from, but we're both in the same height and size range. And he was one of the guys that I studied a lot to see what I needed to do to just not do what he did, but how did he get so successful? Why was he so memorable to this day with an older fan or even a Japanese fan? Like, it was his intensity, it was the way he moved. Like, he was just a big old mountain man, and I'm a very big, thick, broad, boy from the south end of Chicago. That, so we have similarities, so it's a big, a notch on my belt, so to say, but that's also a lot to live up to,
Right. Before we jump into the main reason, because Chad Miller and Al Snow would kill me if we didn't talk about OVW in extension, talk about what you're going to be doing there and everything. I'm going to break and say, all right, you grew up in Chicago, so you're a Cubs or a White Sox fan?
I am a White Sox fan.
So you're pulling for Machado then, right?
You know what? I would take him, but I would much rather have Harper.
Okay.
And that's just me. I just lean more towards Harper. I like him as, nothing against Machado. I think I'd rather have Harper with what he brings to the table on the Sox.
Well, this conversation is now over because I'm a Tigers fan, and I just can't talk to you anymore. No, kidding. The Tigers are putrid right now in the rebuilding stages. So, all right, OVW. Let's talk about what have you seen? This is the big one for me. The differences between when you were there, owned by Danny Davis, compared to owned by Al Snow. Al's been in it forever, more or less, but now being the owner, what do you see different there?
No, what? The big difference is there's probably none, in my opinion. Al has been there and worked hand in hand with Danny Davis for so long there and so many times, either as when Al was heading up Impact's talent relations and talent development area, he was there, writing the TV and coaching talent, and then he was there daily when he was there as WWE's head trainer. So Danny and him see eye to eye on a lot of the business of what needs to be accomplished at OVW and how it needs to be accomplished. So Danny had a lot of trust in Al and still does to this day with that company. And I think there's a lot of people out there, and it's something that I don't think will ever be repeated in this business about how many people have the OVW or Al Snow or Danny Davis thumbprint on them that have gone on to have success in this business. Either they went to them at OVW or individually from scratch, having no experience in this business, to having some and getting a developmental contract. You think about it from probably about 2000, 2001 till maybe 2012, 2013, a lot of people who are still involved with this business up and down the card as far as match level and on a lot of companies have worked with these two individuals or have been influenced by them. And I don't think someone is going to ever repeat that in this business. I think that says a lot about a lasting legacy that those two guys have. So if you ask me what the difference is, I really don't see any. Al's very hands-on, training people, getting in the ring, as far as booking the matches, involved with the TV development and production, and producing the show. So, I've been there for both. I've seen it both. I've worked with them both a lot. And I think OVW is moving into a very, very positive direction. And we'll see where Al decides to take it in the next year or so with the expansions and stuff that they're talking about doing, and utilizing more things, like more of the social media utilization and things. They just did the 1000th episode in October with a co-promotion with Fight TV that aired live. So we'll see. I'm pretty excited about what's going on and where we're headed.
Yeah, they also did Christmas Chaos, which was phenomenal on Fight TV. The whole YouTube they're taping Wednesday nights in Kentucky, and Monday or Tuesday, I'm watching it here in Pennsylvania and doing my report on it for the Can Crushers, and it is just, I'm engulfed right now with King's Ransom, the It Girls. Dapper Dan is one of my favorites. Just that character himself is just great, and just the young talent, as I do air quotes, is phenomenal. They really are. Who do you have your eyes on?
Me?
On you? Of course you. Of course
Yeah, just me. It's the only one that matters there.
All right. Well, all right, others.
No, what I was about to say, too, is the one thing that I think I've always found very endearing and for me with OVW is I'll go back to something I said earlier in our conversation about I had a very wide range of pro wrestling exposure from like Smoky Mountain, ECW, NWA, AWA. I had that all kind of coming at me in Chicago and accessible to it, watching a little bit of here, a little bit there, more of this, less of that, what have you. And the one thing that I've always really liked about Danny Davis's and Al Snow's approach to pro wrestling is you want to have a little bit of everything. You want to have something, you need the serious pro wrestling, a little bit of like maybe the more of the violent stuff, the hardcore stuff from time to time, the women, a little bit of comedy, big guys, little guys. Like, I know that's one thing that Al is always looking at is like, you want to have a little bit of everything. It's like kind of like the circus, we got the clowns, the dwarfs, the elephants, the lions, the tigers, all that stuff. And I think that's one thing, like from my perspective as a kid and as a fan, I saw all that, and it's not just a one type of a match at OVW. It's not just you're just going to get straight wrestling here, or you're going to get a lot of hardcore here, or a lot of like weapons here. It's not going to be all girls. You're going to get a little bit of everything, a little bit of a mixture, and I think Al and Danny in the past has done a really good job with that.
First of all, I got to get this off my head. Al Snow running a circus or a carnival or something after we spoke kind of is very fitting. It really is. So
he specializes in herding cats too on the side. I don't know if you realize that. Training dolphins is another thing Al does for fun. It's quite interesting.
This is for real, right?
Yeah.
I thought he was joking about the whole dolphin thing. I let that go, but that's for real.
No. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. You just blew my mind. So let's talk about, but what are you going to be sinking your teeth into in OVW? Are you coming in, balls to the wall, back to the show, taking on whomever champ may be?
I'm coming in to do my thing. I definitely feel I call myself the best heavyweight in the world, and I definitely feel like I'm up there. And how do you do that? You got to go out there and prove it. So if I got to go out there and knock some people's heads around and throw them around and use my size to my advantage like a heavyweight would, that's what I'm going to do. I know Abyss is still the heavyweight champion there. I am a former 2-time OVW heavyweight champion. I'd like to be a 3-time because it is, say, heavyweight on there. Like I said, I think I definitely fit the bill at about 271 pounds. Slightly. And there's other things there that I haven't done. I've never been an OVW tag team champion. I've never held the TV title. So what we do in pro wrestling adds up to wins and losses. The more you win, the more titles you get, the more money you get, the more fame you get, the more money you get elsewhere, and the more opportunities you get elsewhere. So that's what I'm looking for. As far as else, I'm pretty excited that, yes, Al Snow has asked me to venture into the world of coaching and training. So it's a very early stages of getting everything in line with the curriculum and the programming, but it looks like I will be venturing into that in the future at OVW. I think with my resume, it puts me in a very unique position due to my experience. I've worked for 3 different Japanese companies. I've toured there numerous times. I've done a New Japan dojo stay when they had one in Los Angeles. I've been contracted to WWE and Impact. I've toured Europe. And the people who I've worked with in my career as either an agent, a coach, or a talent in the ring with is a who's who of pro wrestling. So I've been there. I've done it. I've screwed it up. I've been fired. I've had to fix it, go back, do it again. And I have a very unique skill set because of that. So I look forward to passing this on to future stars and helping them get opportunities, when I'm old and gray and I can't, do what I do in the ring anymore.
Yeah, and if you've listened to the podcast, folks, the list of names that have come out of Jay's mouth is unbelievable. 20 years in this business, and 20 more?
If I'm lucky,
Right.
I don't doubt it. I mean, Ric Flair's been doing this well into his 60s. A guy like Bill Dundee as well. Gypsy Joe was still bumping until the day he died, I think. So
Yeah.
you never say never in this business, and I've learned that to be very true. So we'll see what the future brings. And I mean, even Rip Rogers is in the ring down at OVW with his class on the weekends, and he's coaching still, and Rip's over 60. So God bless him.
2 more quick questions, and then I'll give you free form. What advice do you have? What advice are you going to give, as when you're turning into this trainer to the, people wanting to get into the business or young into the business?
What advice? Take this seriously. This can be a wonderful business. It can be a horrible business. It can be a wonderful experience, or it can be a really bad one. And I mean that, like, it can consume you. It can take over your life if you let it. Or it can be something that enhances your life and lets you do things you never dreamed of. Traveling the world, traveling the country. I've seen about almost every state, about 42 states I think I'm up to, and I've been to like 12 or 13 countries, all from pro wrestling. But, you have to dedicate yourself to it. And I mean, it's what you eat, what you put in your body, how you train your body, what you're studying. As far as to make yourself better, make yourself more athletic, make yourself more marketable to a smaller company, a medium company, to a large major company. It's all these things. But on the other side of that same coin, you can't let it consume you, because then it could be like a horrible girlfriend or a horrible boyfriend that just treats you like shit. I've been on both ends of the coin. I've flipped that coin back and forth a few times in my 20 years. But look, if you're not willing to put the time into this, and if you don't have the passion for it, it's probably going to eat you alive, and you're going to waste a lot of time, and you're going to beat up your body. So I would say number one thing is you have to have passion for what you do, because the passion will push you through the crap and the low payoffs or the no payoffs and the bruising and the hurting. And with that, you also have to have that time away, or that's something else that allows you, when you need it, to, decompress when wrestling isn't going so good. But yeah, man, I mean, some people, I think Steve Corino said it once, like, pro wrestling, some people make millions of dollars, some people make a million memories. I'm definitely well past a million memories. I'm not quite at $1 million yet, but I've lived and experienced a lot of things that if you would have told, like, 13, 14-year-old me who was daydreaming and, like, freshman year of high school, I would experience these things, I would have probably laughed at you. But I've gotten to do a lot.
That's amazing. Yeah, the memories. The one that still sticks in my head is you getting the compliment of being compared to Terry Gordy. To me, that's awesome. That it really is. So one last question, and then freeform for you. What would you be doing if you're not a wrestler? Or would you be like a baker or, a construction worker?
I don't, probably one of two things. So I have a college degree. I studied like the social studies, history, political science. I probably would have gone maybe either the teaching path if I would have, I graduated with a degree, but I didn't get teacher certification. So I probably would have either gone to that, or I probably would have gotten to some sort of union tradesmanship, probably plumbing or electrical. My dad's built homes in the Chicagoland area my entire life. So it probably would have been one of those things. But here I am. I'm a pro wrestler. I beat people up for a living.
And you love it. All right. Talk about your appearances, where you're going, what's going on, where people can get you, because you need social media, right?
I do. So if you want to follow me on social media, it's pretty simple. It's my name, Jay Bradley, JayBradleyPW. Instagram. And again, it's JayBradleyPW. PW stands for Pro Wrestling. I also have a YouTube that I'm starting to slowly grow. Might do some documentary stuff about my exploits here in the near future. That's something that's tentatively on the horizon. As far as my wrestling schedule, I'm fairly solidly booked. We do some stuff with OVW over the next several weeks. I'll be up in Milwaukee for Great Lakes Championship Wrestling. I will be up in the St. Paul, Minnesota area for Steel Domain Wrestling. I help a small camp out here near the Chicago area right now, on and off, Premier Pro Wrestling Camp, where I help some of their guys get ready for WWE tryouts. And I also have some very big stuff going on, too, with the NWA underneath the Corrigan regime with Dave Lagana under the Lightning One name. I was just at their the 70th anniversary in October. I just took part in their pop-up show with Tried and True Pro in Clarksville, Tennessee, where my goofy tag team partner had the golden ticket for the Crockett Cup, and he bobbled it, and we lost. And then, I was unprepared for someone like Bram to wrestle one-on-one, so somehow I lost 2 matches in one night. Whoa. So, you wrestle 2 people, or actually wrestle 3 people in one night, and then, you got a lame tag partner. What do you think's going to happen?
Right.
So, I'm looking forward to growing with that brand and what they do going forward with the NWA, and we'll see where that's headed in the next month. Hopefully Japanese tours in my future with Noah or one of the other major companies, and talking to a few people in the UK for maybe later this year. But that's one of those things that's got to kind of pan out because there's multiple promoters involved. So we'll see where that goes.
And folks, if you listened, you know that no days off for Jay Bradley. As we were doing this interview, the start of it, he was in the gym working out as we were doing this interview. So that's the first for the Can Crushers. Jay?
Well, I had to do push-ups.
Yeah, push-ups. You're definitely doing push-ups when you're on the phone. Sure. Jay, thank you for this amazing interview. Thank you for coming on Can Crushers. We hope that, we can reach out to you again in maybe halfway through the year. See what's up with Jay Bradley, who you're beating up in OVW.
It works for me, man.
Wrestling. A love and a passion we all share. I've started a wrestling brand. The wrestling brand. A brand founded on the aspects of wrestling. 2 entities working together to create a product that connect emotionally for people everywhere. Collar and Elbow is the brand. Passion and love for wrestling is the drive. I am Al Snow, and this is Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand.
How about that? Being compared to Terry Bam Bam Gordy. Jay Bradley has had one hell of a career. And as I said, speaking with him, I hope he has 20 more. We have seen Flair, and there's several others that, as we said during the interview, that have wrestled late into their 60s. And Jay's got that frame that he could really be able to do that. So thanks to Jay Bradley for coming on Can Crushers. Thanks for being the first on Can Crusher Spotlight. We'll be back next week with another professional wrestler to be on the Spotlight. And you'll find out on Wednesday's show who it is. Thanks to Al Snow and Chad Miller for making this all possible. Guys, have a wonderful weekend. If you're caught in this snowstorm that we're going to be getting here, get your shovels out. Or just stay in the house and crack open a beer. Have a great weekend, everyone.